All right. Saints just got absolutely destroyed by the Green Bay Packers. Did I expect the Saints to win this game? No. Did I expect the Saints to get blown out this game? Yes. Did I expect it to be that embarrassing? Mm, I mean, the Saints weren't going to win this game. Period. Right? I mean, you look at the situation they're in right now, all the injuries, Spencer Rattler starting. It wasn't going to happen. Green Bay Packers are a phenomenal football team. I just, from what they've shown me since Darren Rizzi took over, I expected there to be a little bit more fight. Yes, that right there, that was one of the worst performances from a Saints team that I've seen in some time. That was soft, man. That was soft. That looked like a team that did not want to be out there, that did not want to be out there in that cold weather playing football that is pretty meaningless at this point, right? Not good. And, you know, I'm not sure you can have any positives come from a performance like this. Um, Especially when you have a GM who's already constantly in denial. But at least it puts more eyes on how dire the Saints situation is and how badly they need to get this offseason right. This offseason is so important. It's becoming one of the more important off seasons that the Saints will have, you know, ever. And I know that might sound crazy, but the Saints, they should have bit the bullet a couple years ago, right? Post Drew Brees, they should have started the rebuild then. Instead, here we are, you know, 3 years later. What do you have to show for it, right? Nothing. Um, what, fourth year in a row missing the playoffs, and it's just this is what you get. Performances like this on Monday Night Football with the world watching. It is a roster right now who, yes, it's injured, but it's also completely depleted of talent and or way too old. And so when I say that the Saints need to get this offseason right, not only do they need to absolutely nail the coaching search, the coaching hire, they need to nail the draft, and they need to do what they can in terms of, just managing the roster. Cut your losses, move on from some guys, and just do what you can, right? Derek Carr, realistically, he's probably going to be the Saints quarterback again next year, right? And at this point, I hate it, but it's probably for the best just because the Saints are going to pick probably somewhere around the eighth, ninth, 10th spot in the draft, and it's already a really weak quarterback draft as it is. You know, so you don't want to take a guy who you wouldn't necessarily take that high in another year, if that makes sense, right? So ride it out with Derek Carr. Come back in the 2026 draft and see what you can get quarterback wise. I think that's going to be a lot better talent pool as far as quarterbacks go. I think, as of right now, I haven't watched them all, but Cam Ward, Shadur Sanders, probably the only two quarterbacks who are going to go in the first round. And you could really argue if, those guys are even worth the slot that they're going to go in. Um, so, yeah, Saints need to nail this offseason, man. They need a complete rebuild. And before the game, I think a report came out that they were interested in Aaron Glenn and Mike Vrabel, right? Aaron Glenn obviously coached with the Saints for a long time, defensive backs coach, former player, and he's now leading Detroit's defense to a pretty good group. They've suffered some injuries as well, so they haven't been as good lately. But overall, this year they've been pretty good, right? And then, of course, you have Mike Vrabel, who, did some good work in Tennessee, but really fell off towards the end there. So, two choices that wouldn't be the worst choices in the world, right? But in my opinion, especially in today's NFL, um, I would like to see them go the offensive route. I'd like to see them hire a guy with an offensive background because, again, that's just what the league is, right? You got to score points. You have got to score points. I mean, the Saints just scored no points, right? Granted, you know, who they had out on the field, but um, they have to get this hire right. And as much as like I said, I wouldn't hate Aaron Glenn, I wouldn't hate Mike Vrabel. I want an offensive guy, and also on the part of Aaron Glenn, man, I want a fresh start. I want some new eyes on some of these names on this roster. I just want a fresh start with somebody who really doesn't have any ties to the Saints. That's what I want. Aaron Glenn. He'll probably go somewhere and become a fantastic head coach. I hope he does. But I just want some new blood, some new blood in the system in the Saints building, someone to completely come in and build up a culture. The Saints, God, they need a culture builder so bad, especially after watching this perform. That I mean, that was just a horrific performance against the Green Bay Packers. Um, just an embarrassing performance altogether. So, you know, in in terms of, like I mentioned earlier, nailing the offseason, not only do they got to get the coach right and everything else right, you got to look at start building the talent on this roster, start building the depth, man. I mean, you can go position by position, and the Saints need pretty much everything. Quarterback, they need a quarterback. They need a quarterback. Running back, Alvin Kamara just gave him a little bit of an extension. He's getting up there in years. Injuries starting to pile on. Kendre Miller, you can't count on him to stay healthy. I mean, you just can't, right? So running back, they could use a running back. You look at the offensive line, left tackle. I think Fuaga's set good there. Left guard, Saints need a left guard. You know, center. I love Eric McCoy. He's an elite center when he is healthy. But again, he's starting to get up there. In terms of wear and tear on his body, and he's starting to suffer a lot of injuries. So, that's another one the Saints might need to look at. I mean, yes, he's a good player, but can he stay on the field? Right guard Cesar Ruiz, I'm done with him, man. It's the Saints. They signed him to a contract a couple years ago, but they're going to need a right guard. And right tackle Trevor Penning. He's made leaps. He's made bounds. He's made great improvements this year. But I think if the opportunity presented itself to move on from him, and you got someone that would immediately be better, I think you look at getting a right tackle. So that's essentially every position on the offensive line other than left tackle that you're set at. You look at the receivers. The Saints started this year with, not the greatest depth in the world. You had two really good 1 and 2. You had Olave and Rashid Shaheed. And then you had also Mason Tipton as your wide receiver 3. So you didn't really start the year with depth at the wide receiver position at all. Um, and then you look at Chris Olave, his history with concussions now. Who knows what that looks like? Who knows what his future is like? I think he's been around at practice, so it looks like he is going to, continue his career. But I mean, I hate to say it, but one or two more concussions, and that could be it. And then Rashid Shaheed, awesome, awesome young player, but he's out this year, and he'll come back next year, but again, they have to look at the wide receiver position because outside of those two guys, who do you have? They were out there on the field tonight with Kevin Austin Jr., Cedric Wilson, Pettis, and Mason Tipton. I mean, you're just not going to win NFL games when that's your wide receiver room, right? Tight end, I think Jawan Johnson has been a disappointment this year. I think Foster Moreau has actually been a bright spot for the offense. I think Foster Moreau has been awesome this year. I really do. Um, what am I missing? You could flip over to the defensive side of the ball. The run defense has been atrocious this year. The Saints need some help on the defensive line. Chase Young, he's probably gone. They're going to need defensive end help. Cam Jordan getting up there in age, obviously not the player he once was. They're going to need a couple of defensive ends, defensive linemen. I think Brian Bresee has played well this year, but you're going to need somebody. You're going to need a nose guard, right? So, again, you need multiple defensive linemen. You look at the linebacker position. Demario Davis getting up there in age, he can't play forever. I mean, he just can't, right? Pete Werner, it seems like injuries has kind of limited him has capped his ceiling, I guess you could say. Linebacker, you need some linebackers. Cornerback, trade away Marshawn, Paulson Adebo's a free agent. Plus, he had that injury. Who knows? They could bring him back on a 1 or 2 year prove it deal. But again, he had that injury, and he was already kind of struggling anyway this year. So who knows, right? That leaves you with Alontae Taylor, who has had his bright spots, but outside of him, you also got Kool-Aid McKinstry, who has looked good at times, but has also looked lost at times, as you would expect from a rookie. But outside of those two guys right now, you have nobody. So you need a cornerback. You look at safety. Again, right? Tyron Matthew getting up there in age. You got Will Harris out there. You got Ugo Madi out there. You got uh I can't even remember his name. Like that's I can't remember his name right now. Who I'm talking about, the guy we drafted a couple years ago. Got him out there. Um so I mean, literally, you could look at almost every single position, and the Saints need it. That is how depleted this roster is. That's how depleted of talent they are. That's how old the roster is. So when I say the Saints really have to nail this offseason, they have to nail it. And I think you just have to bite the bullet. You have to finally acknowledge that you're rebuilding. I don't want to hear no more. about this retool that Mickey likes to say. We're not rebuilding, we're retooling. Like, no, dude, just rebuild, man. Re freaking build. It is time. There is now the best time to start was yesterday, right? Next best time is tomorrow. So just rebuild this thing. Let's get things going back in 2026, back in 2027, and get back to some winning football. This is not fun, man. This is not fun, especially when you're here in December and your team is already eliminated from the playoffs. It's just boring, sad, depressing, um, and just, yeah, not fun. So hopefully the Saints can nail this offseason, get everything right, get things back going to winning some football games. Appreciate you guys watching. Peace.